We're recording. Please go ahead.
Okay, I would like to just a second do one thing really quickly. Okay. So I'd like to call the Town Services Outreach Committee meeting of the Town Council to order on June 26, 2025 at 10 a.m. This meeting is being conducted via remote means. Members of the public who wish to access the meeting can do so via Zoom or by telephone. Instructions have been provided in the public notice of the meeting. Every effort is being made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings. And so I'd like to first make sure that all of the committee members who are present can hear and be heard. There are 4 out of 5, which constitutes a quorum. We have one member of the committee who's indicated that she's going to be able to join for only part of the meeting, and that's going to be a little bit later, so we're not waiting. So with that said, let me see. Bob Pegner, can you hear?
Present, yes.
Yeah, we can hear you. Councillor Lord.
Present.
And Councillor Ryan.
I'm present.
So we do have 4 present, and let me just explain what the agenda is, as it's very tight, and make sure that it's available to members of the public. There is information in the packet, both on the website that's publicly accessible, and in the SharePoint, which is a workspace for counselors who are on the committee. The major items that we're going to take up today is town manager appointments, and we do that when the town manager gets here, which should be fairly soon, but he is delayed in joining the meeting. We will then see if there's any public comment. There are 2 very specific time periods of the 3 agenda items that are present. One is we've been referred public urination bylaw, the memorandum and draft bylaw that was submitted to the council and has been referred to the committee is in the packet, so that it is available to all. And Chief Ting from the police department will be joining us at 10:45, and he is going to explain, and we'll get back to that when he gets here. The other thing that we have a definite time on is the further discussion of the Heatherstone Road process to make a recommendation to the council. And we will have Superintendent Mooring present for the half hour between 11:15 and 11:45. So I am working the schedule as best I can to accommodate that. I don't know if there are any questions from the committee about how we're proceeding. So seeing none, I'm going to at least start by seeing if there's any members of the public who are present who wish to offer public comment at this time. If so, raise your hand. I will come back to public comment later in the meeting if there is time. So seeing none, we have no request for public comment at the present. So, let me ask Counselor Ryan, is there anything that you're aware of from agenda setting meeting that we should be aware of as far as the three major items that are before us when um, they're on council agendas, since agenda setting, I guess, was yesterday?
Andy, I think the only right now for waste hauler, for instance, we're waiting on Paul, so there's nothing there. With TPC, we're waiting on GOL, and GOL is waiting on the attorney. So the attorney's reviewing the two documents, and then that will go to GOL. GOL will then review the two documents we've submitted. So that too is in the queue, but it's nothing pressing. Heatherstone Road, I think it depends on what happens today, which depends in part on Paul. I think he has some things wants to share with us, and you may have some of them as well, Andy. But in theory, if we were to make some decision today related to Heatherstone Road, that could end up on an agenda at the next meeting. But other than Heatherstone Road, there's nothing that seems to be imminently pressing. And there's Paul.
And Paul is here. So Paul, we have convened the meeting and done an agenda review quickly. And Counselor Jennifer Taub is going to only be able to join us for a portion of the meeting. And she's and it's a little bit later, I think, but she will be able to join us. So we have 4 members of the committee present, and I think what we would like to do, if you're ready to do it, is to take up the town manager appointments. You had sent 3 sets of appointments, which are in the packets for the meeting, both on the website accessible to the public and the SharePoint.
Sure. Thank you, and I apologize for being late. So the first set of appointments is for the Energy and Climate Action Committee. And there are 2 appointments, one for a 3-year term, one for a 2-year term. Emily Dorr lives on Amity Street and has moved to Amherst relatively recently with her children. And she is a postdoc at Harvard School of Public Health. Her moved here for her husband because her husband has a job at UMass, I believe. But she has worked with nonprofits and is really motivated to be involved with climate action initiatives. And so that is the first person. The other person is Tetsuya Tanaka. He says you can call him Tanaka because some people can't pronounce his first name. And he is a very bright student from Amherst College and is a rising sophomore. So we have some time with him. He has been very involved at Amherst College and trying to help communicate out what the kind of sustainability efforts that they're doing, but also has some experience in high school. And I think we've always liked to have younger people on when possible on committees. And so he seems to be pretty committed. And we still have a vacancy, so we'll still be looking for another person to serve on the Energy and Climate Action Committee.
So other questions from members of the committee? I don't see any questions coming up. I want to note, just for the public, that I did look, and I noticed that both Stephanie Ciccarella, the sustainability director, and the chair of the committee were involved in the process. So they are aware of the appointments being made, and I assume are both in agreement. So
Yes.
With that noted, Councilor Ryan.
So I'm prepared to make the motion, Andy, if you're ready.
Go ahead.
So I move that TSO recommend to the town council that they approve the town managers of the following appointments to the Energy Climate Action Committee by the town manager. The first, Emily Dorr, for a 3-year term to expire June 30, 2028. And the second, Tetsuya Tanaka, for a 2-year term to expire June 30, 2027.
Second.
So a motion has been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion on the motion? If not, we'll proceed to a vote. Bob Begner,
Aye.
Councilor Lord,
Aye.
Councilor Ryan,
Aye.
I'm an aye. So it's 4-0 with one member absent.
Great, thank you. The next set of appointments is the Public Art Commission, and I have 3 appointments for you. The first 2 are Theodore or T.R. Rosenberg. He is relatively new to town, has worked in as a visual artist, and has, many years ago, has his degree in fine arts and art history, and just basically went to be involved in the aesthetics of the town and making sure art had a place in town. The other person is Matthew Watkins, who we're seeing more of this where people who have, families who moved here to the town during the pandemic, have children in the school district. They've been here a few years and they sort of have their feet under them and they want to get involved in the town. And that was Sarah. I think it's Sarah, the previous person, was in that situation. Emily Dorr and Matthew's the same way. We've had several others. And so it's kind of exciting to have more and more people, especially people with children who are getting involved in town government. And it brings a different generation than we often see. And he is a creative director who has worked for many years in Boston remotely, but also has been in the artistic field professionally and is starting his own company as well. So has a lot of availability for time and has worked in public art. The third person is Lori Friedman, and this is actually a reappointment, and I made this a little bit differently because she did not want a full 3-year reappointment. She's asked for a 1-year reappointment. So I've complied with her request, and she is a really strong member of the committee already. And the Public Art Commission is going to have a lot of responsibility coming up as we start to move forward on the art for the Fort River Elementary School.
So questions from the committee? Did you happen to discuss with any of the applicants whether they have children who are going to be or were presently at either Fort River or Wildwood and will be at the in the new school? And
Yeah, Matthew will. Yeah, he has kids at Fort River. But that wasn't his motivation for being on the Public Art Commission.
but I assume he does bring a sensitivity to the subject.
Sure.
And I think that the other thing that I again noted is that the Public Art Commission chairman chairs part of the process that you had. Any other questions? Seeing no questions, Councilor Ryan, you want to make a motion?
Be happy to. I move that TSO recommend that the town council approve the following town manager appointments to the Public Art Commission for 3-year terms to expire June 30, 2028. Theodore Rosenberg and Matthew Watkins. For a 1-year term to expire June 30, 2026. Lori Friedman.
Second.
Motion that's been made and seconded. Unless there's any further discussion or comments, we'll proceed to a vote. Seeing none, I'll try and go through the same order if I can remember it. Bob Egner,
Aye.
Councilor Lord,
Aye.
Councilor Ryan,
Aye.
and I'm an aye, so it's 4-0 again, one member absent. Paul, you had one more set.
Yeah, so this is for the Recreation Commission. These are reappointments. It's Jonas Cox and Andrew McDougall, who both have been on, and these are just simply reappointments for these two members.
And as far as you're aware, they have been regular and important members of the.
Yes. Yeah, the regular attendees and participants.
Any questions for members of the committee? Councilor Ryan, do you want to make a motion or?
Sure. I move the TSO recommend that the town council approve the following appointments by the town manager to the Recreation Commission for 3-year terms to expire June 30, 2028. Jonas Cox and Andrew McDougall.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded.
Were you gonna do the third person too, or are we
Uh,
gonna do it separately?
I only see my sheet shows only 2 names, but that may be.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's right. You're right. I'm sorry. You
Okay.
you got it right.
All right. I mean, we could add somebody else, Paul, but is this committee, is the committee full at the moment or no?
No, I think we have one more slot.
Okay, well, this is no.
So we have a motion that has been made and seconded regarding recommending appointments as made by the town manager to the council for the Recreation Commission. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to a vote. Bob Hegner,
Aye.
Councilor Lord,
Aye.
Councilor Ryan,
Aye.
I'm an aye, and so it is again 4-0. One member absent.
And if I can just update, so in terms of, we did have an appointment for the Affordable Housing Trust that was put on hold because the council was looking at that person for service on the planning board. So and they would prefer to be on the planning board if they got chosen for that. So we have that on hold. I have a number of reappointments that are still going through the process, making sure everybody still wants to serve. And then there's some committees that we're still recruiting for. We don't have a pool big enough to really fill the seats. So you'll have some more coming to you, I think, during the summer. The sort of hard one for us right now is the Historical Commission / Local Historic District Commission. Those are the ones that really need members, and we did get a new application in yesterday, so we're recruiting for those, and Angela's doing a great job of trying to get folks to sign up.
This is an interesting question because when the council has appointments to committees, there's always a desire to have enough applicants that there's a choice. Do you have that luxury with appointments to committees that you appoint, or
I would say more often than not, we don't have that luxury. But the committee, when we were interviewing, after we interview and we consult, which includes someone from the Resident Oversight Board, the staff person to the committee, and the chair of the committee, they really do try to make sure that it fits. They're not just filling seats to warm seats. That they really want to make sure the person will contribute, especially the chair of the committee. That's in their vested interest to have someone who's going to be a valuable member. So I think there is some judicious, we don't appoint everybody who applies. It really is a decision about the skill set that's needed and the sort of balance. And right now we're really struggling a little bit more with gender balance, quite honestly, in terms of paying more attention like that. That was an issue with the ECAC in terms of having we're having several women roll off or choosing not to, or resigning. So that we try, for all these committees, we try to look at gender and racial balance and everything.
okay, well, thank you. Is there any other comments about committee appointment process?
Andy, can
Otherwise-
we quickly confirm that Jennifer, she just joined, can hear and be heard?
Jennifer,
Hi, yes, I'm here. I may not be able to stay the whole meeting, but I'm here now. I can hear.
okay. What has happened so far is we have just been voting, and we were unanimous, but for you not being present on appointments that were submitted in the packet. So that's where we are with the agenda. So is there anything else that people want to talk about regarding the committee appointment process? Otherwise, I think we can move on with the agenda. And let me just go back again. And
Paula has her hand up, Andy.
Paula?
I just wanted to say a quick thank you to Paul for really looking at the gender and the racial and the different people that we want to bring to the table to represent. So thank you for.
It's important. Yeah, thank you.
So what I'd like to do is go back one last time on public comment and see if there's any public comment. And then we're going to get a report from the town manager regarding the waste hauler RFP process. And after that update, any questions that may come from the committee, our commitment is that Chief Ting is going to join us at 10:45, and we do have, I guess I should reword it slightly. I have a commitment to Chief Ting that we would be prompt in reaching the agenda item that he is joining us. And so I am trying very conscious of timing for that reason. So is there any requests from members of the public for public to participate in public comment? Please raise your hand if you do, and I don't see anyone raising their hand. So with that, I'm going to determine that we've offered the opportunity for public comment and none has been requested. So we can move on. Paul, you had indicated that you would provide an update on what has been happening with the waste hauler RFP process.
So we haven't had, we haven't focused as much as we should have on this so far. And so we do need to refocus on it. I think with councils taking fewer meetings this summer, that'll give us a little bit more time to work on it. We do have a list. It's been hard to find a consultant to do the work that we really need to have done. So we initially had reached out to the Collins Center, and when we reached out, they declined it. So I just got a list from Susan Waite of several people who could do the work. So, Guilford got it, and so he just passed it on to me this week. So we're going to reach out to those folks and see if we can get somebody in here to help do the work that needs to be done, so we can keep moving this forward. So that's where we are.
So open it up to members of the committee to see if there's questions. Jennifer.
Thank you. So yeah, I understand, Paul, there's been a lot going on in town. So would the hope still be that we could have, I mean, is there any kind of timeline, like the RFP could be drafted by the end of the year?
Yeah, so the reason we were trying to use the Collins Center is that procuring the services makes it easy because it's an intergovernmental agreement. We can just sign a contract with them. If we do have to get a private consultant, would have to do an RFP process to do them, unless I can convince the Collins Center to sort of host this consultant that we bring in. So I didn't really want to have to go through another procurement process to hire so that's the dance we're doing right now. And sometimes if it's under a certain amount of money, we can just get 3 phone quotes under the Uniform Procurement Act, but it depends what the value of the contract is.
So do you think the next time we get an update, let's say it was 3 months from now, we might actually have an RFP written, or just that we
Oh,
would?
yeah, I would hope so. I would hope so. Yeah.
Okay, so if it's,
I should say it depends on the time frame of the person we hired to bring in, if they're able to jump on it right away, which is going to be a priority for us.
okay, thank you. Could you, maybe even in a council meeting, just let us know when the consultant, when that
Yeah,
piece is?
absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
that would be helpful.
I'll add that to
Okay.
the town manager report.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Well, thank you, Paul. There are no other questions I have. I think that Jennifer is also one of the co-sponsors of Waste Hauler bylaw with me. It was really asked but I think are the important questions now. We're anxious, obviously, in keeping the process moving, but want to have an informed and thoughtful process so that we end up with something that not achieves the goals and is workable, and
Mhm.
assume that that's what the purpose is. So if there's nothing further on Waste Hauler, I think what we could do now, because
Guilford's here. Guilford is here.
yeah,
Andy.
I was going to point that out.
Okay.
Superintendent Mooring is here. And so we could actually start the discussion of Heatherstone Road for a little bit and then return to it afterwards. I know that we have that Superintendent Mooring has advised me that he has a hard stop and needs to leave the meeting. I think by 11:45 was the time that he gave in his email. So, I'm juggling all of this as we're moving along. But a key factor was that we were going to try and see how users of the neighborhood roadway have, particularly with larger vehicles, have reacted. And so maybe it would be helpful to start with that discussion. The other thing that Guilford knows that I'm going to be asking about is, but if the council makes a decision to remove the current structures, what the process is for doing that and whether there's costs related. But I want to save that. I save that for later, and let's talk, get the reports on the larger users. And I think, Paul, you had talked with a number of the larger users, or users with larger vehicles, I should say.
Sure. So I can summarize that really quickly for you, for the committee. So I reached out to the police department, fire department, UMass Transit, which runs the buses in Amherst for PVTA, and the Amherst Public Schools. I think Andy had previously reached out to USA Waste. So the police department said there are no complaints from the police department regarding the mini roundabouts. We do not have any issues navigating through them, and they've been effective in traffic calming since they have been installed. We have not received any complaints of speeders in that area, which we used to get on a regular basis. I think that's unusual that we don't get, because usually when you repave a road, speeding increases, and that's the next, when we get complaints about the condition of the roads, and then we get complaints about once the roads are repaired, then people are moving too fast. Fire department said we have not had any issues due to the low profile. Our larger vehicles have to drive over parts of them, which is how they're designed. As long as they stay as they are with no additional signage, they do not present an issue. Signs would be a problem. Likewise, as long as they are kept clear of snowbanks, they're okay in the winter. This past winter was not an issue. Under UMass Transit, who runs the PVTA bus that goes, hi, Paul, thanks for reaching out. We have not had major issues with them, though they do throw the right side of vehicles far too close to the curb line in mailboxes. We don't see any appreciable improvement, reduction in travel speeds from other passing motorists. We see distracted driving as auto drivers are focused on the confusion that these non-standard irregular structures present. We see many issues with left-turning UPS trucks with their extended wheelbases failing to navigate any portion of the structures. During winter months, winter operations, there are snow impediments that become issues for us as they can linger for many days and reduce lane clearance. And I would certainly not want to plow, this person said. From the public schools, they said they've seen the many roundabouts, and they're definitely impeding the travel of school buses. The buses have to ride over them or try to avoid them completely to turn onto other streets. And they felt like they weren't installed they were only installed with small vehicles. It says the potholes alone on that street should be enough to calm the traffic. So those are the 4 comments I got back.
Okay, and so what I have from USA Trucking from person who's let's see if I can find her title. She's listed as site manager, and she included a few pictures, and she said that she talked with drivers. We can't maneuver our trucks around them completely, so we run over the edges. We have also have stops down each side street off of Heatherstone Road where these are, in which case we have to either back down into or off of the side street. So in some cases, we actually have to split them, truck wheels on each side. It doesn't seem to hinder what we need to do at all, and we aren't causing any damage when we're driving over them, but we can't avoid doing so either. So that was the report. And
Can I just note one thing, Andy? So I just want to mention that it was the chief of police who responded. It was the fire chief who responded. It was the operations manager for UMass Transit who responded. And then it was the director of transportation from the schools did not respond, but it was an administrative assistant in the school department that responded. Just so you know who I talked to.
So are there any questions or comments, I guess, from members of the committee? And I guess, before I do that, there's one other thing. And this is a question to Guilford. The pictures that USA Trucking sent were just pictures of what is there now. With the one thing that I noted, however, was on all of 3 pictures, there was like an orange cone at the center of the mini roundabout. And is that a regular practice? And if so, what's the purpose that they were there? And are these the kinds of impediments that some of the other reporters were talking about?
The orange cone isn't supposed to be there, but it keeps reappearing. We haven't figured out where it's coming from. We've put some cones out in the area for other things, and we think maybe someone is putting them in the middle. And maybe some of our employees are actually putting them in the middle and just not saying anything about it, but they're not supposed to be there permanently. We do plan to paint some lines in the neighborhood because people think they need lines. So we're going to do those as well, but I don't think we've gotten to those yet.
So questions from members of the committee? Jennifer.
They seem to be, I mean, a wide range of comments. So how do we reconcile that? Like it was the PVTA, one thinks it's very problematic and others think it's working great. So I don't know what to do with that.
Councilor Ryan?
First, just a clarification. The AFD felt that the signage would be a problem. I didn't quite understand that. And if signs were put up, that would somehow restrict their ability to get around. Is that what they were saying? Well, I didn't understand why signage was a problem. They said as long as there's no signage, they're okay. Is that the issue? That it's just a sign there would make it impossible for them or difficult for them to maneuver around?
I think that's why I read those comments and I had the advantage of seeing them in advance, which is why I raised the question of the orange cones too. That the difficulty with the larger vehicles is that as they were described to us when we recommended going ahead with installation of mini roundabouts, and what the council acted upon was that these were essentially speed tables that could be driven across on an as needed basis in order to maneuver, and therefore wasn't going to be substantially different from any other speed table that might have been used as a traffic calming device. And if you put any structure, what we were getting as comments, I interpreted it as if you put a structure of some sort, a sign, or as I was asking about the orange cones, does that make it difficult or impossible for them to use the roadway as if it was just a regular speed table, another form of a speed table?
Yeah, you're not supposed to have anything in the center. You're supposed to have the center totally clear so a larger vehicle can track completely across the island if they need to.
Does that answer the question?
It does for me. I had one other, just, it would seem that the user of this road on the most regular basis, day in and day out, would be the school buses. Wouldn't they have the most? I'm just thinking, I mean, we hear from the police department, they haven't heard any complaints, so it sounds like traffic calming is effective. But in Paul's report, if I'm remembering it correctly, it seemed like at least from the school side, if I remember right, they weren't seeing any real reduction in speed. They were seeing examples of distracted driving. So they were somewhat negative. Is that right, Paul? Was the schools that felt that there really hadn't been any, at least from what they said, there hadn't been any real reduction in speed?
No, that was for PVTA who.
Oh, PVTA, okay.
Yes, the
And-
PVTA, and they run regularly,
So
daily.
they also run it every day, so they see the road a lot.
Right. And so I think what they're saying is that they can navigate over the speed humps, which is how they interpret them to be designed.
Right, right.
That they had the same concerns that the fire department had. If there are additional signs that were put up in the middle, that would be a
And they
problem.
couldn't get through. Right.
So
And they felt there wasn't I mean, at least this one person, or whoever it was, reported felt there didn't see any real reductions in traffic calming. Was that what they'd said?
I guess, hold on, I can read to you what they said.
Yeah.
We don't see any appreciable improvement / reduction in travel speeds from other passing motorists. So there's no change.
Okay.
But they're the ones who mentioned about left turning UPS trucks.
Right. Right. Okay. Thank you.
Jennifer?
Yeah, well, the PVTA, I was also concerned about coming too close to mailboxes and to the sidewalk. So, I mean, it sounds like PVTA has some serious concerns.
Well, I don't think they actually try to drive over the island like they're supposed to. I think they try to squeeze in between the island and the curb. So they don't just take it and mount the island like other people do. They just
Could
Right.
they be instructed to do that or pointed out that that's what it's intended?
Sure.
So you think they're not going over it, they're trying to go around it?
Bob?
Yeah, I mean, when I was talking to people, which was early in the process, I must say, they were concerned mainly with left turns. The UPS trucks in particular, and even some of the buses would turn, if they had to turn left, they wouldn't go around the roundabout, they'd just go in front of it, basically. Which isn't necessarily a problem, but it is, it's not kind of using the roundabout the way roundabouts are supposed to be used. And secondly, people who were making a left-hand turn through the roundabout would have issues with oncoming traffic not giving them the right of way that you normally expect in a roundabout. So I think, I don't know if those problems have been solved, but those seem to be issues that were kind of structural to the actual design of the roundabout that I don't see that how, again, it could be that now that they've been up for, several months, people may have gotten more used to them. And those left-hand turn complaints may not still be around, but they were pretty, I mean, and I saw, some of the turns. I actually saw them, cutting in front of the roundabout to make a left-hand turn. Especially the big trucks. So I don't know. I don't. Again, it seems like maybe that's not the issue anymore, but it was a big issue when they first went in. I don't know, Guilford, do you have any updates on that?
No, we're not really hearing much at all about it.
Mm.
Although now it's in a meeting, we'll hear all types of stuff.
Other questions or thoughts about it? Guilford, yeah, Councilor Ryan.
Well, just to come back, I guess I appreciate hearing what the rest of my colleagues have to say. I appreciate Paul's report. I guess for me, the thing that's most striking is the police account that they are not getting the kinds of complaints and concerns that they've had in the past. That would seem to suggest, in spite of some of the other evidence we heard, that this might be effective in one of its primary goals, which was to calm traffic down, slow traffic down. So that for me stands out. I don't know if it's definitive, but it certainly seems like a interesting and striking observation.
So I guess that, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, the biggest concern is clarification with PVTA, whether they whether there's been a discussion with PVTA regarding how to use the intersections in the most useful fashion for them, and whether that kind of a conversation might be a helpful thing to do before a decision is made. Take either way on what should happen.
I mean, what he says is her first thing was, we have not had major issues with them, though they do throw the right side vehicles close to the curb line and mailboxes. And I think that what Guilford's explanation is because they're trying to go around them instead of just going over them.
Yeah, which is something that
A conversation could fix.
yeah, I mean, Guilford, could you have a conversation with them about it to see if they're using the intersections or can use the intersections in a different way?
We can talk to them.
And I had one other question that I had raised earlier. Councilor Ryan, your hand is up though, so I'll come back to it in a minute.
Well, I'm just thinking out loud, but based on what I've heard today, I don't see any compelling evidence that this needs to be changed. Maybe there's some things that could be communicated that people could use the roundabouts properly, and that would be, if Guilford or somebody could do that, it'd be great. But I'm not hearing anything that cries out for, removing them. And so I don't know if maybe others feel they need more information. I think we've got more than enough information. And I'm not hearing anything that says that this really cries out for a change. That's kind of my immediate reaction to what I've heard today.
Jennifer?
I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to get off, but I would just, suggest that there be a conversation with PVTA if they're trying to go around when they should go over. So I'm sorry, I have to leave.
We
I
will
just
have
couldn't-
a discussion later. We're gonna go to change topics now because Chief Ting has joined the meeting. But I do want to come back to this and kind of conclude it as a process discussion as to how we're going to proceed with this discussion, so we can get to some conclusion and make a recommendation to the council. Ultimately, it's a council decision.
So do you expect Guilford to wait, or do you want?
Guilford, if you want to do something and come back for a few minutes, that would be certainly fine. The question that I had raised earlier, and you had responded to me directly, but I didn't know if there would be follow-up questions. So, which is the timeline for making a decision and the process that would be involved once a decision is made, if that is the decision. So, anything else, Bob? Otherwise, I'd like to turn to the other topic.
No, I was just going to say, Mandy Jo's in the audience. So if we're going to move to the urination bylaw, then she should be brought into the meeting.
Yes, thank you for noting, for keeping an eye on that, because I thought she was getting an invitation if she wanted to join us. Athena,
Yep, she's coming in.
okay. So, Chief Ting,
Hi, everyone.
welcome. So, welcome to the Town Services and Outreach Committee. I assume that you know the counselors who are present.
I sure do. Thank you for having me here. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
So what happened was that, you and Councilor Haneke can give us the background, but Councilor Haneke introduced a bylaw which was referred to TSO, and we have actually, I think that the request was with an initial report back by June 30th, which is coming up on us really quickly. Doesn't mean we have to have a decision on but it's a report. So what we wanted to do today was to get an understanding of how this arose, and then what the need that you saw. And I'm going to just paraphrase it really quickly, and then Councilor Haneke, if you have anything to add to it. But Councilor Haneke had told me that this had come up in a discussion that you had regarding a different bylaw, and I think it might have been nuisance house, but that you were indicating that this kind of a bylaw is something that some members of the department really would find useful as an alternative. And so that was the basis that Councilor Haneke then offered to sponsor a bylaw, and did so. Councilor Haneke, do you have anything else you want to add at this point, or can?
Not Not particularly. I think you summarized it well. I would just say that the other thing I would add is in terms of the actual language of the bylaw, I'm not wedded or particularly in favor of any particular one. There's a lot of questions in the memos that need decisions, and I'm not the one to make those decisions, but I had to propose something. So I proposed as comprehensive as possible. But wherever TSO goes with its recommendations, including changes to what is proposed, I expect that. And I will sort of support any of that because one person is not the right person to make those decisions.
So, I don't know if you have anything you want to add at any time. Paul, as town manager, please let me know. But I'd like to ask Chief Ting to explain to us what the reason was that you had made the original recommendation that Councillor Haneke was following up on.
Sure thing. So a while back when the nuisance house bylaw was being revisited, I did have a conversation with Councillor Haneke, and she had asked me, if I was to have a wish list of items or things that might be needed to include in the nuisance house bylaw, what would that be? And immediately what came to mind was adding a urination or even potentially a defecation section within the nuisance bylaw. So the proposal is really, it's a quality of life measure. During the school year, we received countless complaints of people urinating on their property, particularly during off-campus house parties, from the gatherings to party goers, when they're traveling from one place to another. It's very prevalent. We see it in the center of town with the bar crowds. Our officers encounter patrons who are constantly outdoors urinating in public. So that's something that we have witnessed firsthand. And also in town, we've in the past year, we had an issue down in the Boltwood parking garage where people were urinating and defecating to the point where we had multi-agencies gathered together to try and figure out solutions. We had the health department involved, the DPW, because they were the ones that were cleaning out the garage every single day, and it was problematic for them. We had Crest involved. We had the fire department involved to try and figure out, what can we do. So as a result, back in August, a porta potty was rented and placed in the exterior of the garage to try and alleviate that situation. And unfortunately, that porta potty was destroyed. It's unknown by who, but the rental company no longer wanted us to rent from them. And most recently, we also had a situation at Sweetster Park where people were using the park to urinate and defecate. And again, these encounters are being discovered by the DPW, who's having an issue with it. So certainly we're very sensitive to the unhoused community, and that's not really the focus of this initiative. And I don't know if those are the culprits, to be honest with you. It's just recognized that it's difficult to find relief when there's no public facility, and I understand that. Hopefully the Portland Loo project at Kendrick Park will kind of assist in that. But really, this is a measure to try and combat the issues that we have with college parties. Right now, our solution to that is when we do catch somebody or we see somebody who's egregious enough where they're urinating in public for everyone to see, our solution to that is either giving them a warning or citing them criminally or arresting them. The problem with that is the charge would be disorderly conduct. And that doesn't give us any other options in between to try and mitigate this situation. So if we included this into our town bylaw as a nuisance or have a standalone measure, our general fine across the board is $300. I think that's a fitting punishment or consequence for this type of activity. This is something that, certainly our officers would use instead of arresting them for having to urinate. I truly think this would be a measure that would help us out our department, and certainly it would generate some money for the town as well. Not that that's the focus, but certainly that's a benefit. So I'm welcome to answer any questions that anyone has.
Currently, when somebody is arrested, what is the charge? Is it indecent exposure or what is it?
So it's dependent on the circumstances. If it's just public urination, then the charge would be disorderly conduct. Certainly, there's other variables that come into play to make a decision if it's open and gross and lewd and lascivious behavior and versus just public urination. So, there have been other communities, other police departments will charge them with it's considered a sex offense, which it really isn't. So that creates a host of problems when you are charging somebody improperly in that sense. So the method we would use is disorderly conduct.
Councilor Lord, you have a question?
Thank you. I have a few ideas around different engaging public health to help address some of the underlying issues, engaging the universities. But aside from all that, I have a question around, I know like if you're on probation or parole and you can't afford to pay, there is a community service element that you could do a certain amount of hours. Do we have anything like that set up for if people can't pay the $300 fine in the Amherst Police Department or Amherst Town?
We do have some, not exactly, yes and no. The reason why I say yes and no is we participate in C4RJ, which is a reformative measure. We would partner with the courts as well as with any victim or the suspect as well to try and find a measure to something along those lines instead of necessarily paying a $300 fine. However, with that being said, something along these lines with just public urination, the courts don't really recognize that as really a crime per se. If it's indecent exposure, that's a different story. If it's open and gross, lewd and lascivious behavior, that's a different story. But they recognize that usually it's college kids who are just trying to relieve themselves, and it's nasty behavior, but does it rise to the level of criminality? This kind of alleviates that question in mind with a $300 civil fine. We don't have to go that route with charging them criminally.
Thank you.
Well,
Yeah, just to add to that, so I don't know if this is connected to the courts or if it's connected to the university, but sometimes you'll see young people out doing cleaning, scraping flyers off of telephone poles and stuff there. And I've talked with them and they're doing they have to do a certain number of hours, 20 hours of community service or something like that. And so they go to the business improvement district. The business improvement district had reached out and said, we can take them because there's always something to clean downtown. And so that's what they usually assign them for.
but yeah, Councilor Lord.
I know it's probably not safe or anything, but I'd almost have them clean up the garage and the defecation. So then they know the impact of what their actions do, but that's aside.
It's a difficult topic because I think that if and this is maybe Chief can help us with this. If we have a fine, it is non-payment of fine is the question that then comes up. It's not quite the same as you would do if there was a you're looking for something to get around the criminal charge, which is what the department is trying to avoid, is having to go that route by offering having another option available to them. One thing I had asked Chief was, as far as our initial research and our being Councilor Haneke and I had both done some looking, we hadn't found any Massachusetts communities that have such an ordinance or bylaw. Are you aware of any?
I am, and just one thing, if I could just mention before I delve into that, Andy, is that, these fines are very similar to other bylaws that we currently have. We have a noise bylaw. We certainly have a keg bylaw, and both of those amount in the fine of $300. And the system is already in place for non-payment. If they fail to pay or appeal, certainly then it goes to the courts. And at that level, it could be argued that a person might not be able to pay, and there could be other avenues for consequences, such as community service. So certainly there are some avenues there. It's very similar to, like I said, the systems that we already have in place, and that's kind of how I was looking at it. In terms of other communities that currently have it, we tried to research just Massachusetts, so I didn't look outside of Massachusetts, and we found that there are several towns and cities that have adopted similar type of ordinances, and most of them are attached to their nuisance house bylaw or ordinance. So for example, the cities of Brookline, Medford, and Somerville and Oxford all have an attachment to their nuisance bylaw that prohibits public urination and defecation. East Hampton and Lowell have specific ordinances for those infractions, and the city of Fall River also attaches public urination, defecation to prohibited areas around their watershed and unauthorized camping on public property. So there's a few models out there for us to take a look at, and some of them have fine amounts that are attached to that.
That's helpful. I had looked at actually a few of those communities. I know I looked at Somerville, I didn't find it. So it must be, you say it could be attached to something that has a different name.
It's like a subsection. So they have a nuisance control bylaw, and contained within that nuisance control bylaw, there's a section that talks about urination and defecation that's included.
Councilor Ryan?
So what I'm hearing from Chief Ting is that this is a problem, and one that they encounter on a fairly regular basis. And what I'm hearing is that some kind of bylaw like this would be a tool that they could use appropriately and effectively, and give them some leeway to deal with it. So that's sort of the sense I have. And I guess the question I have is then what are we, TSO, being asked to do? Are we going to revise or somehow fine tune this bylaw? Or are we simply going to, assuming that so it's a procedural question, but my main point is that we're hearing from the chief, this is a problem, and I could really use this bylaw as a tool, and my officers could use it.
That's a Haneke.
If I may, I can look at the Massachusetts ones, but you can too as the committee. But there's a lot of choices to be made, and I proposed one set of choices, and I was hoping TSO would discuss those choices and make some decisions on the choices together with the chief. Where is it regulated? If you're going to regulate it, where, if you look at my memo, you have in various places, you have various options. Various communities have said on just public ways and public property, any public space within certain distances of public space, which would include then private property, within certain distances of perennial waters, which it sounds like that might be what Fall River did, some sort of water distance, onto public or private buildings, onto public or private land. There's a lot of choices with the where. Whether it needs to happen in the view of someone or not. And and whether it includes defecation or just urination. Those are just some of the questions. And so when I wrote mine, I did it expansively, but there's a lot of nuance to any of the communities I've looked at outside of Massachusetts on what they choose to include in a prohibition. And so that's where I see TSO's role if they want to go forward with a proposal in making those choices.
So that is helpful. The one thing that I thought about when I was looking at what you had drafted as nutritional bylaws, that I'm one who always thinks about statutory construction based on Mandy and I have the law school experience running for us. I don't like to use undefined terms in bylaws because it gets into a question of what does it mean in perennial waterways. I think needed a definition, for example. Bob?
Yeah, when I read this, the bylaw itself, it seems to focus on public areas, and not like private property, which would be, I would think, one of the main complaints, because people are, urinating next door to their party house or something. So I don't know whether we say, I don't want to wordsmith it, but on a public or private street, because we have private streets in town, and sidewalk, yard, park, etc. So just to put the private in there, because the way I read this, it's a public area that we're only prohibiting. So if someone is urinating on a private property, it's not considered part of this bylaw. It's not subject to the bylaw. That's the way I read it. And I think someone could argue against, argue against the town to say, well, I was on private property, so this bylaw doesn't affect me. Just a thought.
Councilor Ryan?
Well, I think Bob has put his finger on something important. So again, hearing from the chief, this is a problem that very much involves private property, not just public property. And so any bylaw that we want to create should include private property, it would seem, since a large number of those incidents seem to involve that kind of behavior.
Councilor Hanneke?
So I think the packet includes the compiled urination laws, which gives some different language. The current draft says, or in any place open to the public or exposed to public view. So it does bring it in a little bit, but other towns have said a certain distance of any public place, in plain view of members of the opposite sex, minor children, pedestrian traffic, or vehicular traffic. There's just different ways of saying it. And so, there's one that had it, or onto any public or private building, wall, floor, hallway, steps, stairway, doorway, window, onto any public or private land. Very comprehensive. That one was Eagle Grove, Iowa. So there's definitely examples of how to word it if that's the goal.
I have a question for the chief, and that is a couple of related things. Do we have complaints that come to your department from citizens about urination or defecation on their private property? And is there anything you can tell us about that? The second thing, and we may need to also consult with Dave Zomack about this, has there been any complaints about conservation areas, including Puffer's Pond?
So I have not had any conversations with Mr. Zomack in regards to any issues at Puffer's Pond in relations to urination or defecation. In terms of complaints, it usually comes along with a noise complaint. Traditionally, somebody will call in and say there's a house party going on, next door, and along with that, there's people urinating in my bushes. They're throwing cans and beer cans and beer cups, littering all over my lawn. I want somebody to come and handle that. So that's usually the case when it comes to the complaints. It's not direct per se. And a lot of it is on view from our officers, whether it's on foot patrol through the center of town. We see people all the time it's a result from the bars, or it's people traveling to and from different destinations, and they will stop and urinate in somebody's bushes or whatnot. So there's a full gamut of different situations.
Councilor Ryan?
So Chief, I guess just a very practical question. My understanding is that your officers have to actually see the behavior. So if I'm a homeowner and I look out my window and somebody's taking a leak in my bushes, and I call you and make the complaint, unless the officer actually sees them doing that, there's nothing else that can be done. It's just, my word isn't sufficient. The officer actually has to witness the behavior in order for you to take action of any kind.
That's correct. That's
Okay.
correct. So disorderly conduct again would be the charge, and that's almost basically if one person is acting in a manner that's disruptive to the general public for no legitimate purpose. So a lot of different things can fall into that category of disorderly conduct, and certainly public urination would fall under that because it's a misdemeanor offense that would have to be in the presence of a police officer to take some sort of action. So that's correct, sir.
Tina, you have.
I was just able to grab Dave quickly and ask the question that came up about conservation areas. He doesn't recall any complaints about urination or defecation in conservation areas at all.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. Are there any other questions right now for the chief? Bob?
Yeah, Chief, or anyone really, if this bylaw as written, would it apply to like a 4-year-old child who can't make it to the bathroom, or is that something that you guys would just not address, not find somebody because their kid had to go to the bathroom?
Yeah, that's certainly not the spirit or the intent of this proposal. I don't know if it would be specifically written that there's an age limit or something along those lines, because there's so many variables to be able to have to write down, but certainly that is not within the scope of this idea. Now, officers have a great amount of latitude, and certainly
Right.
common sense should prevail here.
Okay, thank you.
Have you had any discussion with your counterparts over at the Mass Police Department as to whether they have any problems on campus and if so, how they deal with it?
They are in a similar situation as we are, as far as I know, through past conversations. But they have a different system where if they stop somebody who is urinating in public, they will report that through their dean of students, and office for administrative sanctions or whatever type of action that they decide to take. So they have a little bit more leeway in that sense. So they have some options that we don't. But they're in a similar situation where they don't have a bylaw or a fine to attach to that type of behavior.
So additional questions? If not, I have a question for the committee. Is there anybody on the committee who feels that we should not go ahead and work on development of a bylaw? They could, and if we're going to take that step, then I think a couple thoughts about process, or at least one thought about process. But is there anybody who has feelings that we shouldn't do something? Paul?
I'm not saying it shouldn't. I'm just wanting to clarify. If I'm hearing what the council is saying, is the chief has identified a challenge in terms of typically, public urination or defecation that happens in our town, that they don't have the right tools to address it. The council's responding by saying, okay, what tools do you need? And I think he's saying we'd like to have a bylaw that allows us to do something other than criminal disposition, where we could issue a fine to a ticket. But also what I hear the counselor saying is that we don't want it to be so overly broad that a little kid peeing in someone in their own front yard would have, an officer could, issue them a citation or something like that. So you're trying to define it to the real nuisance piece of it. And I think that's why I think some communities put it under the nuisance part of their bylaws, because it can be defined that way. And then we do trust our officers to have discretion, but then you could also, and then the other challenge seems to be, how often are they actually present witnessing something? That's because we do get complaints, and you can't substantiate that this person peed in my yard. No, they didn't. That's always, so I think it's a tricky thing to navigate yourself through, but I think the chief had found I think 5 communities that had something similar, and it might have broader applications as well if we're so anyway, just trying to clarify where the council is going with it. So I'm just saying out loud. So
It's helpful. Councilor Hannah, let's see, Councilor Ryan.
Actually, Bob had his hand up first.
Bob,
Yeah, I was going to say that I do recognize, Chief Ting is really crystallized in my mind the need for something like this, because it is a nuisance in town and it's a problem. I think we should, as a process, or in parallel to the process of working on the language for this, we should be advertising somehow to the unhoused people and to the students that, yeah, this is coming. So, we're gonna take this seriously. And so they're forewarned, and not just caught, well, I've always peed in bushes. I'm a senior, and, I've been peeing in bushes for, since my freshman year. So, just, I don't have a problem with enforcing this bylaw, but we got to give some people some heads up that it's coming, so that they're not caught unawares, so to speak. And the other thing is, I understand that we have a problem with putting porta potties out, but we should, in parallel with this, try at least to get the bar owners and things like that to understand that they have to make sure that, or try to make sure that people relieve themselves before they leave to go home, that, or we put out more porta potties, in strategic areas, hopefully they won't be destroyed the way that the one was at Boatwood, but it just seems like we should be trying to alleviate the problem without forcing police action, so to speak. So that's just my thoughts.
Councilor Ryan?
So maybe more a process question, but do we have a choice between amending or altering the current nuisance bylaw? And maybe it's a question for Mandy, maybe she would have an insight on this, but do we have a choice to make, if we go ahead with this, should it be a standalone bylaw such as been proposed? Should we make an amendment to the existing bylaw? What are our choices there? What makes the most sense? What's the least challenging way to proceed if we proceed?
Councilor Haneke?
So our nuisance bylaw is directly related to houses and properties, not general public nuisance. So I suspect that Somerville has a general public nuisance bylaw that's not trying to identify houses that create nuisances themselves. So if we had a public nuisance bylaw that was general, specific to individuals and not aiming for houses and properties, then it might be easier to do it that way. But the fact that ours is sort of specific to identifying properties, not people in general, a standalone is probably at this point the easiest. That doesn't mean to say that at some point in the future a different public nuisance bylaw would be more logical, or that TSO might rather take up, instead of a specific public urination one, look at general public nuisances, that public nuisance bylaws, not nuisance house bylaws, that include public urination, public defecation, and other things that create public nuisances. We've tended in town to do noise as a separate one, things as separate bylaws instead of one general public nuisance one.
Councilor Lord?
Thank you, Bob, for your comments as well about, I know in New York, there was a 4-year-old that the parent got ticketed. So I'm glad that we don't have that spirit, and I hope we never get there. But if it's a particular parent that has annoyed the town, you just never know because we're human. But I also wonder, as a social worker, once you're at a certain point of inebriation, I don't know that the $300 fine is a deterrent. So I know it will give us some action and it'll help the people that aren't so drunk, but I still hope that although our public health systems are underfunded, we still find ways to, and I know UMass is trying to work around Barney Blowout or Hobart Hoedown, whatever it's called these days. I think it's Barney Blowout. I just feel like also underlying like the violence. Why are you going to destroy a porta potty? The lewdness. I don't know. It's a societal issue. I don't know how to solve it. I hear that this bylaw will help. And so policing is a part of it, but I also think there's a larger piece that we can't do as a town council necessarily, but if we start thinking along the lines of some responses from a public health point of view, I don't know. Thank you. Yes.
Yes. So you've raised a little bit in there an important issue that I've thought about is the very young children question. I think requires separate attention so that we don't accidentally create a problem, because parents, even with being very conscientious with their kids, you can't control when they're going to have that need and you're going to have to do something. And I don't think we want to make life difficult for them. They have, as parents, we all have to do what we all have to do at times. I am very appreciative of the chief of your bringing this forward and Mandy following up on it, because it is important that we provide you with the full range of options that you need in order to come up with the best result possible. And, you know, giving somebody criminal record and treating it as a criminal activity is something that is a choice, but we want to make sure that it is a choice by having an alternative. So I would think that we do want to go ahead and look at the various issues that Councilor Haneke has brought to us, and try and look at some other bylaws and see if we can define what it is that should be included if we go forward with the bylaw, and what we need to do to make sure that we're not creating any unintended consequences that we can avoid if we are thoughtful about how to as we develop this. Is there anybody who disagrees that the committee will continue to work on this, and that we will try and create a process that brings forward an analysis of those issues? We'll keep Chief will keep you informed as to what's going on, but obviously your time is limited. I didn't want to make you a full participant in the process, but I think it's been very valuable to hear from you, and will be important to be able to get your thoughts as we go forward, because this is an unusual but important thing for us to attend to.
Thank you. I appreciate everyone's time and consideration for this. I really do. I think Bob had a question.
No, I just wanted to, I was just saying thanks.
So with that said, why don't I, as I always do, work with the vice chair of the committee, and possibly relying on the sponsor of the bylaw that's been referred to us, and see if we can define a process to go through the issue, identify the issues, and then go through them in an orderly manner, and keep the committee informed by having this become a regular item on the agenda, so that you're informed as we go forward and have the opportunity to provide input. Is that anything else that we can say at this point? So hearing none, I think that we will continue to move forward. Chief, thank you for being with us this morning. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you again, everyone.
Thank you. So we have a few minutes left, and I want to turn back. I think that Guilford is now not with us, but the question that the next question I think we're going to have, as far as the Heatherstone Road, is whether we're getting near to the point we need to make a decision as to whether we're making a recommendation to the council. Normally committees, when they've considered a topic, come forward with a recommendation, and whether we need any more input before we schedule a time to actually make the recommendation. So are there any thoughts on that topic? Would it be helpful, Councilor Ryan?
Well, I'm probably repeating what I said earlier, but based on what I've heard today, and based on the discussion that we've had, I don't see any compelling reason to recommend any change. So I guess my thought would be at this point to recommend to the council that we actually don't think there should be any change, that the roundabout should be left in place. They do seem to be having some traffic calming effect. Larger vehicles do seem to have figured out how to manage them. And in one case in particular, we might encourage some outreach to suggest that they, get better at managing them. But I personally don't hear anything that cries out to me that we should recommend removing them. That's just my thought.
Bob?
Yeah, I agree with George. I think, even if it's just for another year, I think we ought to keep them in place and see how, see what happens. I don't know of any particular accidents that have been caused by these roundabouts. I think there have been some concerns, for people on making left turns, and I think that's an issue, but it's more of a I think it's more people need to be educated that these are roundabouts and they're not just a regular left turn. If someone's in the roundabout, they should have the right of way. And maybe we need to make that clearer somehow. But I mean, that seems to be, if they're truly roundabouts, then roundabout rules apply. The problem is that it's not obvious to everyone that this is a roundabout. And so people are going to interpret the structures differently. So I agree that we should keep them in place. However, I don't know that we are solving. I don't know that this is 100% solution to the problem, and maybe there is none. But I do have some concerns about people getting confused or not understanding that these are roundabouts and therefore roundabout rules apply. So.
Councilor Lord?
I think in general, our people need to be educated about roundabouts. I see so many mistakes, confusion, especially over the bridge in Northampton. But I remember we heard a lot from the community members around installing these, and I think I haven't gotten very many responses that it's not working or that they're unhappy. I don't know if it's just going to the district counselors, but I think that to me says it's working, at least somewhat, since we're not hearing that people are still speeding, the kids are in danger. So I would be in agreement with leaving them up at least for, another year like someone proposed, and then, seeing if it still makes sense to keep them.
Well, I'm not going to take a motion today because what we said, the agenda item is posted was to review of Heatherstone Road process needed to make a recommendation to the council. But we could, in our report, just say to the council that we intend to go ahead and make a recommendation at our next meeting. And we think that it is time to do so and to move forward, and that we've made the request to Superintendent Mooring to contact PBTA and talk to them to make sure that they understand what is the best way to proceed with that, bringing their vehicles through those intersections. And I guess the other thing, and I think your point is well taken, Councilor Lord, and that is that people don't understand, always understand the rules regarding roundabouts. I think that's what's particularly difficult about this one is that large vehicles, when you get to a big roundabout, a regular sized roundabout, they at least understand what the expectation is. And they can, for the most part, adhere to it. When I go, the one that I have to go to most frequently at the north end of Kendrick Park, you know, it's no question that the buses are using it appropriately. Buses can't use the mini roundabouts in a traditional roundabout rules. It's just not possible. And so there's, to the extent that we've created confusion, it's with the creation of a roundabout that's so small that the standard roundabout rules can't apply. And I don't know what we can do about that. It's an education question. Councilor Ryan?
So Andy, your thought is that we should wait until our next meeting to have a formal vote on this, and in the interim, it might be mentioned in the chair's report. Is that your thinking here?
I will draft a report as quickly as I can for comments by all of you as from the committee, so that because we don't have much time to do it, and I'll try and include in that report the suggestion that we've had substantial discussion, report on what we've heard, and that we think that it is time that the committee make an actual recommendation and intends to do so. Does that sound right to you, Councilor Ryan?
Yeah, I think, and I think you're also saying that you're, in the interim, you're hoping that Guilford will have a chance to reach out to PVTA and hear back from them. But my impression at the moment is that we're not expecting any new information, and we're not expecting any further discussion, but that we're still going to wait until the next meeting to take an actual vote.
Yeah, I want to hear from Athena, and I had one other thought, something that we did not ask Guilford.
This wasn't a referral from council. This is something that TSO took up on its own, correct? So I don't think the council needs a recommendation to not take an action. I mean, I think a report with a discussion of what the committee has found and the information that it's gathered is entirely sufficient.
Councilor Ryan?
That was kind of my sense. That just, you know, and if you can't get into this report and understand the time pressure, then the next report. But essentially, you would just report back that we've had this discussion, and the consensus is that we don't see any need for a change. And if the council members of the majority of the council wants to take it up seriously, then they could do so, and then they could refer to us, and we could do this all over again. But I don't think that it requires any kind of formal recommendation.
I appreciate the point, though, is when I do a draft report, I need to make sure that the writing is clear. The one thing that we did not ask Guilford when he was here was whether there have been any problems with snowplow in those intersections, and whether during the snow season there's been any difference in how people are being able to use those intersections. And that might be something that we ask him to report on at the next meeting. So I don't think that getting to the end of our time, and there were minutes that were added yesterday to the packet I don't know if anybody has had a chance to look at the minutes, however. Tina?
There was just I put 3 dates on the agenda and 2 of those dates had already been approved. And so you just have the one set from June 5th for approval today, if you're ready to do that.
Have people had a chance to look at it? If not, we would probably need to postpone it one meeting. Yeah, Bob?
Yeah, I looked at it very briefly. I didn't see any glaring issues, but I didn't read it, fully enough to say okay. But I didn't see any particular issues with it.
I mean, the other thing we could do one of 3 things probably. Either take a motion today on the minutes, we could decide to postpone it till the next meeting, or we could designate a counselor to approve on our behalf and let that counselor spend a little bit more time. But we just do recognize that we only just received them yesterday, and it was so we were rushing to do other things.
I'm okay if we just do it at our next meeting.
Okay, let's
Kind of
do
regular
that
order.
on the agenda for the next meeting, and then the packet for the next meeting with any other minutes that may be added. As far as the next meeting is concerned, I had proposed that we not meet on July 2, that we got into the peculiar situation because of Juneteenth. And so we pushed back the Juneteenth meeting date till today, which then puts us into to get back into first and third, we'd have to do something different. I would suggest that we not meet again until third Thursday of the month, and then get back onto the regular schedule.
So that you're suggesting the next meeting would be July 17, is that correct?
That is correct. And that will give us time to say we're going to conclude on this Heatherstone Road thing to ourselves. We're going to make progress on the public urination bylaw. Are there other issues that we need to start getting on the agenda? Is the last question of the day. And then that will allow us to conclude this meeting. Councilor Ryan.
So I've raised this in the past, and I'm not sure it has any legs, but since we are the Town Services Committee, and our purview is, broadly speaking, the services the town provides, and the sense that our residents have concerns or issues. We spend a lot of time on roads and sidewalks and those kinds of public way issues, which if our TPC proposal goes forward, which I think is likely, that will be taken off our plate completely. In my view, services covers everything, not just the issue that we have been dealing with primarily for the last year and a half, and probably even before that. So I guess I've asked this question of my colleagues in the past, whether they feel that we should broaden our scope and think about other services the town provides, soliciting input from residents and also perhaps from, I'm not trying to create work for staff, so that's a concern, but and the one particular issue that I've raised in the past has been with an aging population, services related to seniors. We have an age and dementia study, and I had suggested it some time ago that it wouldn't be a bad idea for the members of this committee to read it, and maybe to talk about it. So that's just a thought. What do we see? We also have the issue of outreach, and what we see our role there as. So just a thought.
I tend to agree with that this is something that we need to think about as a committee. I don't think that today is the appropriate time to do it because it's so late in the day. The question is, do we have feedback that we want to offer to GOL? And if the council votes to create TPC, whether a reexamination of what the role is of this committee is necessary, and then the second thing that I think we need to be aware of and may want to discuss more fully when we have time is that as decisions may have to be made in the year ahead, which is going to be a very difficult budget process, about what it is that the town can afford to do, given the limitations of Proposition 2.5, other things that we're fearful that may happen from the federal level, working directly or through the state, that affect revenues to the town, whether they're going to be hard decisions ahead. And are those hard decisions that should be made just by the Finance Committee to recommend to the council, or is there a different role from the Town Services Committee approach to looking at those kinds of issues? So if there's a proposal to radically change or eliminate a department, is there, in order to get the balanced budget, is that purely Finance Committee, or is there another, does it need participation of another committee? So I would just pose that question today for you to think about, and let's come back to it. Anything else? Bob?
Yeah, along those lines, I think it would be very helpful if each of us go through the proposed budget for next year and determine, where's their money to be had. I mean, where can we find the money that we need, given that it's going to be a hard year, and as you said, we might have to recommend a cut of a department or two. Where can we give? Where can we give in the town budget? And I don't know, Paul, you've probably thought about this more than anybody, but I think it doesn't hurt for us as committee members and as counselors to, kind of assess where we think we can find extra money, basically, in the budget, because we're going to need to.
And by next year, you mean FY 26 or 27?
Well, I mean, yes, I meant we're done with the budget for FY 26. I'm not suggesting we go back and review that. I mean, but review the FY 26 budget in thinking ahead to the FY 27 and where we can find the money to do the things we need to do. We know we need to do that. We don't have any funding for it, like roads and sidewalks and affordable housing and things like that. We just don't. We know we have a need for a lot of things, and we only have so many resources. And where can we give? You know, where can where can we find extra money in the budget? You know, I mean, if we have to cut something, what do we cut? And I agree, Andy, it's not just the finance committee that should weigh in on that. I think the town manager should weigh in on that as well. So I think it's going to take a lot of careful thought and consideration as to how we can afford to do the things that we want to do.
I agree. I'm going to call him Paul in a second, but I think this is going to be a big challenge for the next elected council. Forming the coming up with a budget for FY27 is going to be an extraordinary challenge, and one that council is going to have to be prepared to make difficult choices on. Paul?
Yeah, I think it's a important conversation. I think it really is going to show up through the council's goals for the town manager, and I don't think there'll be enough efficiencies by nibbling around the edges. You know, we have introduced a lot of new things, and also, you know, expanded departments and things like that. So I think it's going to be like, is our challenge to provide the services that we've agreed to provide, which is what our operating principle is that the council and the town has provided these services, and we'd work to maintain those. But we're seeing that the reductions in budgets or the really is hurting departments in terms of the expense category, mostly because because of all the other pressures on the budget. So I think it's you got to think about like big things, and that's gonna be a really, really hard conversation.
No, I agree.
Yeah, the other thing that I don't want to go into finance stuff too much, but Paul, when you know, we've heard about from various departments, the one consistent thing that we heard a lot of was we're having problems hiring, and there are various reasons that our departments are having problems hiring, but some of it has to do with what it is that the challenges that we're expecting that are unique to Amherst, and some of it is that there's a financial crunch that is putting upward pressure on what we may be needing to pay to be competitive in hiring.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, this isn't a topic for you to respond to today. When I raised that question, the MMA committee on which I serve, what I heard was, we're not alone. I was hearing that seeing a lot of other committee members effectively nodding and saying, yes, we're having the same problem. And if that's true, then we are really in a very strange competitive environment that I think that we will need to talk about too. George, Councilor Ryan?
So Andy, what I'm hearing from you as possible topics and possible roles for this committee in the remaining months that we have before the end of our terms. One is to re-examine the role of TSO given the likely creation of TPC. What do we see as the role of TSO going forward if that happens? But I'm also hearing that you think there might be a role for this committee to talk about town services and what we see as essential and what we see as not, apart from the discussion that takes place at the budget in the finance committee. So if that's what I'm understanding, you're suggesting that those two topics would be future topics on an agenda.
I think we do need to make a decision, and I don't want to do it today because I want to get us adjourned on time, is that we will need to TSO will need to talk about that question of whether it is a this year item or a next year item for the next TSO is going to be something that has to be thought about carefully because, we've got question of the goals that we're going to define for the town manager and the council itself, and budget process for next year. And we're recognizing that this is an issue in the development of the next year's budget, and it may be the next TSO and not this one that's the appropriate one to do that. That's something that we need to consult with the president and the council about and give some thought to. Is there anything else? Not, I would take a motion to adjourn if somebody wanted to adjourn.
I'll move that we adjourn.
Your second?
I
I will
second.
Okay, we have Councilor Ryan second motion to adjourn. Take a vote. Bob,
Aye.
Councilor Lord,
Aye.
Councilor Ryan, and vote yes, and so we're adjourned. Thank you. It's been a difficult but a very productive meeting, and I appreciate everybody who helped us, include Paul, including you, us particularly, in helping us get the information together to make this an effective meeting. We are adjourned.
Thank you.
Great.